All right, Trash Talkers, welcome back. We got a pretty interesting and eventful episode this week on The Bachelorette. We're in full swing of some other reality TV shows as well, including Love
Ooh.
Island, if you've been keeping up with that. So, halfway through the summer, and things are really starting to heat up, figuratively and literally. It's been about 100 degrees here every day. Speaking of things heating up, let's first start talking about the Whoa Whoa challenge that Katie insisted the boys take part in. It's part of this week's episode. For those who don't recall what I'm talking about, Katie put a ban on any forms of self-care, as she liked to put it, for the boys for a while to see who could last. Nash, what were your thoughts on that? Let's start there.
Yeah, so that is weird. I don't know. I don't know what to think. It just seems like it seems sort of childish. It's funny for sure. That's the thing. It's definitely has that comedic effect. Would anybody actually abide to it? I think that one guy, what was his name?
Blake?
Blake, yeah, Blake would, yeah, Blake's fine. But I don't think anybody else took
Oh,
it
you mean
seriously.
Mike,
Mike.
the virgin.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like it's funny. I think the funniest part for me, I just assumed the guys didn't do that while they were there, because I imagine, how do you get away from all the other people and all of the cameras? Like, there are cameras and mics everywhere. How do you even feel comfortable enough that you have enough privacy to get away with that? Everyone seemed like a little like, oh no, what do we do now? Which I think was the funniest part about it, because I was like, I had no idea that these guys were getting away with doing that the entirety of their time there. That's crazy.
They just go to the bathroom, right? I mean,
I guess apparently long
right?
showers are the go-to. So I learned something this week.
Educational, this show.
Another thing that a lot of people are talking about after this episode was we got some really heartfelt goodbyes, but we're going to get into that a little bit later. First, we have to talk about our first one-on-one, which went to Justin. I was honestly surprised to see Justin even get a one-on-one. Nothing against him, but it seemed like, other than his pretty expressive reactions, I haven't felt like we've seen a lot from him. And I still feel like in this date, we didn't see too much from him. You know, I guess I'm not really seeing their connection still, even after a one-on-one. Although I feel like part of that is because of the nature of the one-on-one. You know, imagine going on a first date and you're basically practicing for your wedding already. That, to me, they did it for Zach and Tayshia on Tayshia's season, and they ended up getting engaged and are still engaged. But I'm not a fan of the wedding photo date.
Yeah, it seems kind of weird to me.
It seems like a surefire way to make somebody freak out. It's like, oh, hey, I don't know even what your middle name is, but let's pretend we're getting married and we haven't been on a single date yet, but let me write my vows to you. Like, I wouldn't even know what to say. I've been watching the whole season and I wouldn't have even known of what to say to either of them in either situation. So I just think that's so weird. I feel like a date like that is kind of useful towards the end when the numbers are dwindling down, because if someone's going to freak out at the idea of marriage, it's better for them to at least get to that point and get to know you first before you're going to see if long-term commitment freaks them out, rather than a first date. Although, one thing I thought was pretty cool, and I think this is only cool because of who we are personally, they got a private Max concert. And you actually got to see him in concert and meet him. How was that?
Big fan of Max. Great music. All right, fantastic musician, but I have to say, in that particular instance, that must be the most awkward thing in the world, doing a private concert. Because I was noticing it when they were doing like this over-the-shoulder camera of them, and they like had Max. It's like they're just like kind of staring at each other. Like, that's so weird to be like the only two people listening to a band play. Like, that's so weird to me looking at it.
Yeah, and you're like 6 feet away from the performers, and what we saw with like Blake's date as his one-on-one where they got a private concert. It's like they're making out a few feet away from the person singing to them. That's uncomfortable in every sense of the word. Even I wouldn't even want a private concert with a group of like 6 people, let alone a one-on-one first date type.
Yeah.
So I agree with you on it being extremely uncomfortable, but I think I'm a little biased just because of that connection to Max. Another thing I did see from him on his social media about why he was so excited to do this concert is because up until quarantine, he had never watched The Bachelor, didn't care for it, didn't really understand what it was, but it's something him and his wife started doing together during quarantine, which I thought was just very, very sweet. So that I did like.
We share that, Max.
Anyway, moving on to the group date. So we got, now that we're dwindling down, essentially what's happening is the guys who aren't getting brought on a group date are getting one-on-one dates. So it's pretty much the entire group is there. We had some drag queens come out to host their very own debate/roast with the guys. I thought this was an interesting date. I do know there's a lot of footage we didn't get to see.
Yeah.
The guys also during this date did a runway show, which I thought that would have been 10 times more entertaining than what we actually got. What we actually got was some of the guys not wanting to put a target on their backs and the immature guys not caring and doing it anyway. That's all we got from this date. I feel like maybe Katie learned some things, but not to the extent that the guys throwing shade wanted her to. I feel like even though this did result in those people going home by the end of the night, I feel like this was not as much of a driving force behind that as the editing made it out to be.
Yeah, to me it seemed really like, I honestly thought it was a pretty good idea. That sounds like pretty fun if you just, take some time to just dog on each other, there's nothing wrong with that. But to me it felt like nobody was actually committed to like the game of it. You know what I mean? Like they took it very seriously. Everybody seemed a little calculated in it. And then like you said, they started throwing shade. They weren't just like making fun of each other like to try to be clever or funny. It was just sort of, I'm just going to be hurtful and manipulative almost. Like that's just the vibe I got from it. And if, there is probably a ton of other footage that we didn't see, but it just felt like nobody got to real the heart of the activity, which was just sort of, throw yourself into it. You were like, the whole point I felt like was to make yourself a target too, Not only how well can you dish it out, but how well you can take the heat.
Yeah, and I feel like nobody executed at all what the instructions were on this date. I will say that one thing that I think is not going to be a hot take, well, it's a hot take because it's not going to be a popular take, and I've been pointing out little things every week as we're going along, and I'm going to keep doing that even though he's a fan favorite. Something Greg said really, really bothered me, and I think is just on top of the jealousy we're already seeing is another red flag. Didn't seem to bother Katie. It would have bothered me had it been said to me. He had told her when they were talking about how he was feeling that he didn't like talking about his relationship with Katie in front of the other guys. Granted, maybe that's because they're all dating Katie and that could get weird. However, he seems to be the only guy with that hang up, and the reason that sits poorly with me is because if a guy doesn't want to talk about how he feels towards you to his friends, that's an issue. If he's hiding how he feels towards his friends and he's fronting in front of his friends about his relationship with you, that's not a good situation. That's whether it's he's insecure, whether he's got something else going on, whatever it is, that to me, maybe I'm being very, very picky. I did not like it. And I'm not liking Greg's behavior at all. I feel like he's going with the flow and then is really jealous the other, 50% of the time he's going with the flow, just doing his own thing with the guys. The other 50% of the time, his insecurity and his jealousy is getting the better of him. And I feel like that's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that is a weird thing. Definitely not a positive thing to say. Just because, why would you like be afraid of that in any way if you actually or care about it or if there's actual stability? You know what I mean? Like what's the point of hiding it?
Yeah, we all know you're on a dating reality TV show. We all know you're going after this girl, and you continue to get a rose every week. So what's the issue with vocalizing that in front of other people? Why can you only talk about how you feel towards Katie to Katie in a private room?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't like it. It's giving me weird vibes towards Greg, and I feel like there's gonna be something about him that is going to be a huge red flag eventually. I just don't know what it's going to be and how it's going to play out. But I personally don't fully trust Greg. I'm not sure yet if it's because he isn't being truthful about how he's feeling or he's not going to be ready for a commitment. I don't know, but there's just something about Greg that is giving me bad vibes.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think I would add a bit of a caveat to that, saying it seems to me like production-wise, the producers are angling more towards that. You know what I mean? Which, not to say that it's wrong or anything, but I feel like if there's definitely a push, like when we saw it with Carl, or was it Thomas too? It's like they sort of did it to themselves, right? Like that it didn't seem like there was like an editing push or something on the production side that made it seem more real, like they were less, or like they were worse people from the way they cut it. So I would give it that, little tidbit, but I kind of agree with you there. I'm feeling a little iffy about him. It's feeling shady to me.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost as if he's seeking attention when he's with Katie. And I don't know if that's sincere or if it's to get validation to make himself feel better or what. We'll see what happens with him, but I'm posing those questions now, so if it does happen, nobody's surprised. Another big red flag we saw was from Hunter, which I think after last week no one was really surprised by. He straight up lied during the date to Katie's face, and the lie was about if he was falling in love with her, and when he was asked by the drag queens, he said not yet. He said he doesn't throw that term around lightly. Seemed super, super sincere, and I believed him. And then obviously, when he was put on stage in front of everyone, including Katie, he said he was falling for her. What got me, and maybe this is another scene we didn't see, but the drag queens that he was talking to could have easily been like, yo, yeah, Katie, like, he just flat out lied. Like, did he not foresee that potentially happening? Like, not only did Trey call him out, but he could have easily gotten called out by one of the drag queens. So that to me was like, that seemed like a last-ditch effort to save yourself when you're backed into a corner. So I didn't like that.
Yeah, no, I'll agree to that. And it seems like something that they definitely would have brought up there. Like we saw that snippet, I think, at the end of the episode of them all sitting around the table. Like if they had that much private time to talk about the guys, I feel like that would have been something they brought up.
Yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't bring that up. But, well, we know how it ended for him. However, this
cold.
Well, it's the truth.
Ice cold.
What we did see though at the end of this group date was the whole Hunter drama did come up again in a group setting, and it literally made Katie sick to her stomach. That's terrible, and I hope the guys felt really, really bad at the end of that night, because that was literally a direct result of them dragging the issues out and not just settling it with themselves. I feel like every single week, it's like they're playing Tattletale. There are a bunch of little kids at lunch, and Katie's the lunch aide that they're telling on, like, it just seems really, really immature every single week. But we've seen some of those guys exit the house at the end of this episode, so we'll see if that trend continues.
I totally agree. It's just like every week somebody becomes, the scapegoat or the target for everybody else to put all the blame on. And honestly, it makes it seem like she hardly has sort of a say in things at this point.
Yeah, it's more the guys deciding who stays and who goes than Katie.
Yeah, that's not right, man.
And that's not something we normally see either. They've really taken this idea of basically like unionizing against one of the guys every week. This show is more like Survivor than it is The Bachelorette.
No, I agree. That's what it seems like. They're deciding who gets off
Literally,
the island.
the weakest link that gets voted off the island every week. But someone who wouldn't have been voted off the island by any of the guys, Connor B., the math teacher, the cat man, the musician, he got his one-on-one. We got to talk about it. As soon as he was leaving for his date, and they included the shot of him wheeling his suitcase to the front, because they have to do that every one-on-one, because there's always the potential they're going to be sent home. Very rarely do they show the shot of them with their suitcase. As soon as I saw that shot, I knew he was going home. They were sneaking in a little bit of foreshadowing with that scene. And the whole time we're seeing the conversation between the two of them. We're seeing how Caitlyn and her husband are reacting to them. Because it was a double date, which personally I did not like. The point of a one-on-one is it for it to be a one-on-one, for it to be intimate.
That's a good point.
And they had
That's
a couple's barbecue, and I feel like I was surprised that Katie was cool with this, only because her one-on-one date that got her sent home with Matt, Tyler C. was like a third man involved in that, and I feel like that totally took away from any type of connection Matt and Katie could have had. Even though there was none, I feel like any potential for one was pretty much thrown out the window when you include another party, and that's what she did with Connor. And maybe that takes away some of the edge. I just feel like it was really unfair to him to throw him into a double date when it's technically supposed to be a one-on-one.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it wasn't the date that did it for him. It was the lack of chemistry, the lack of a spark. I really thought that maybe he was going to be able to turn that around and that Katie's opinion was going to change, but it did not. We saw that final kiss, and that was the last nail in the coffin for Connor.
I don't think I've ever been more upset by something. I don't like Katie anymore because of this episode. I absolutely hate her. She seems just totally fake to me now.
You want to elaborate on that?
I will elaborate on this because, you know, we've got this whole image of being like a sex positive person, right? And it's like, okay, what you have an issue with the physical display of emotion when he kisses you. That's her issue. Everything else about this guy that she said over and over again, where he's perfect, he's the perfect guy, couldn't do anything wrong to her. Even when they're on the double date, everybody else is just like, yeah, they seem great together. They're very flirtatious. You know, they seem very organic, and, you know, they match very well. And her issue is this physical aspect of it. You can't claim to be a sex positive person, and then when something that's physical that you can, sum down to being an aspect of foreplay, and you're afraid to bring it up to somebody, or you don't ever bring it up to somebody, instead you're going to like play a game with it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, I'm just going to test them, you know, and if they don't fix it without me telling them, that's their fault. Like, no, that's not you just lied about everything. You're a liar. You're a liar who's playing games. That's all that is. That's all that is.
Wow, that was a big reaction from you.
It was because I've been rooting for, her this whole time, she seems like, okay, she wants to be straight up with people, go for it, you be you. But that's like, when you're going to lie about yourself like that, no, I can't, I don't like you. Especially when it's like, yeah, he's the best guy. He's perfect for me. Oh, but you know what? I don't like how he kisses and I never told him, and he didn't figure out that problem for me never telling him I had the problem. So, yeah, I'm going to have to let him go.
All right.
That's fake. That's fake.
Agree and disagree.
That's middle school level attitudes.
I agree and disagree. I agree that she should have told him or had a conversation about the kiss because, again, if you are a sex positive person, a part of that is being open and willing to talking about the physical aspects of a relationship. So why would you not, if you didn't like the way he was kissing, because I think where it comes in that I disagree with you is I think it's possible to kiss someone, have nothing be wrong with the kiss per se, but the lack of spark, the lack of passion, I get that part of it. That part of it, I think, is super valid. Like, if you're kissing someone and it's doing nothing for you, then it's doing nothing for you. Maybe that's a complete and total lack of physical attraction, period. I don't know, but I do think if she had brought it up to him or had maybe suggested something different, because if you can't flat out tell someone they're a bad kisser, it's not going to go over well for you. However, if you tell them you'd like it if you tried this, or if you take the lead a little bit more, I feel like you can test the waters and see if maybe it's just how they're kissing that's taking you out of the moment versus who you're kissing that's taking you out of the moment. But if she was fully confident that it was him and a lack of emotional feeling towards him that was leaving the kiss with something to be desired, then I don't know. But I do agree that maybe bringing it up and having a conversation about it might have been more beneficial to them than her just seeing if something changed by circumstance rather than actually trying to make something change.
I just don't think she was honest. I don't think she actually knows what she wants. Because you can't say that and then you've got, what's his name, Mike still on the show. You can't, I don't think you can do those two things. I just don't think you can.
So after that heartbreaking goodbye, and I think what made it so heartbreaking was his one quote where he said, "It's okay, I know where this is going." Like, as soon as she got there, that I think more than anything killed me because he knew right off the bat and still tried to comfort her and be there for her. And I think, obviously, from Katie's reaction, we saw that it was just as pretty much heartbreaking for her. It didn't seem like an easy choice, although what didn't sit too well with me, I do like Blake. I did not like that.
He's a snake?
I don't know that I'd call him a
Blake
snake.
the snake. He's snaked. What do you mean?
He
knew he capitalized on a moment of her being low to be the comforting shoulder, and that's just a fallacy, you know? It's a lie. It's not like, because she thought, you remember, that's what I distinctly remember about, is how she thought he was just going there, you know, randomly doing that. But then she figured out, no, he knew that that's what happened because Connor came back in, and so he planned and acted on it, and so he's a snake. That's just snake behavior.
I get what you're saying, but part of me also thinks like he wanted to be the one to kind of bring her out of that funk, and that
of course.
Yeah, but I feel like that's genuine. Like, if
it's not.
Okay, if it were you and you were pursuing someone and you knew that they had just been through a really hard time, would you not want to be that person? And if we're pulling from personal experience, I know you and I know you've been in that position. And would you have considered yourself a snake for doing that?
No.
For taking advantage of a situation that could have benefited you?
No, because that's not how I acted, but that is how he acted. He purely did it for his own benefit.
I mean, arguably,
he's a guy that's been on the show multiple times, and he seized a moment to continue being on the show. That's
I don't know if
he
seized the moment to continue being on the show. I would like to think that he genuinely wanted to make her feel better because he has feelings for her, and when you have feelings for someone,
he's genuinely wanted to marry all 3 different women.
No. You know what I think really did it for me with this Blake situation is the song he played I don't know if anyone else remembered this, because I haven't seen anyone else talking about it on social media, and maybe I'm crazy and made it up, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. The song he played was the song that they danced to on their one-on-one. And the reason that song stuck out to me was because they gave a little aside during it, and they were like, oh, the song lyrics were so perfect, blah, 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 during that episode, that when it switched back to their date and you could actually hear the song, I was really trying to listen. And then when it came around to this episode, that's the song he was playing. I'm like 99.9% sure of what I just said. So if he's the one who suggested that and suggested to play that song, then he genuinely does care for her. And I think
or he's just being emotionally manipulative, which is what the whole scenario is.
I think you're just being a little cynical.
No, I'm not. That's what a snake does. That's all I'm saying. He used everything in the playbook of manipulative. That he did all of it.
Well, like, it would have worked on me then.
If he had done it like the day before, or the day after, or something like that, where it's like where they actually like it naturally came up, that's totally different. But no, he capitalized on it and was manipulative as possible.
Well, I think something we might want to keep in mind here is if the guys could make romantic gestures like that at any time when Katie was alone, they probably would. I imagine for the sake of everyone's sanity, the producers do have to keep Katie and the guy separated as much as they can. However, when failure to keep them separated is going to progress the show and be something that's going to be TV worthy, they let it happen. And I feel like that's what happened in this situation. Because like guys would be going up and doing stuff like that every night of the week if they could. Because it would help build that relationship with them. They would steal those extra moments of time with Katie to get farther and to progress their relationship. So I imagine there's times where production enforces those rules, and there's times when they're willing to turn a blind eye and find Blake a boombox.
Yeah, no, it's too much about this is premeditated. It's not like he just came up to her. It's like, no, he knew this was happening. He created a plan, and it was very manipulative. No matter how you look at it, it was.
I don't get your argument that you're making. I really don't. I do, but
fake.
I don't agree with you.
It seems fake. And that's just all it is. It seems fake, like that just doesn't seem genuine. It seemed like she maybe needed a moment to get her own clarity. And what did he do? He put himself in the middle so he could get more attention, so he could get more time. That's what it seems like to me. Like he wasn't that concerned necessarily with her. He did something that literally anybody there could have done to the same success, but most people don't do it because they're not snakes or scumbags.
I think you made a valid point, but I don't think you've sold me yet. But I don't want to... I guess time is going to have to tell on this one because I don't know. I think it could go either way, but I'm still leaning towards it's something he wanted to do.
Like the snake.
To be a shoulder to cry on and to be a support system. I mean... Arguably, every action is manipulative because everyone's doing everything on this show in order to progress their own relationship and to see how they feel about Katie. Like, everything's selfish, and whatever you break it down towards at the end of the day. But I feel like the intent is what changes things, and I do think his intention was good.
Yeah, but why?
Because
I just think I've got more evidence to say his intention is bad than there is to say it's good.
Yes, you do.
That's all.
It just has my gut feeling.
He's a snake. He's a snake. He's just a snake. All right, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna go with my gut feeling on this one, but we'll see who's right by the end of this season. I think I'm right. So. Moving on to the rose ceremony.
Can't wait for Blake next season on The Bachelorette.
Well, if he gets kicked off early enough, we'll find out if he's going to be on Bachelor in Paradise. On that note,
I've got a feeling that Connor's going to be the next Bachelor.
You think? Is that your
Yeah.
prediction?
That's my prediction, ladies and gentlemen. I'm signing it off, I'm sealing it up, and I'm sending it in the mail.
All right. Nash is on the campaign for Connor as the next Bachelor. I gave my prediction, I believe, last week. I think it's going to be Andrew S. But anyway, to the rose ceremony. So we saw that Katie canceled the cocktail party because she said she was pretty definitive in her choices. She had made up her mind. We saw some of our troublemakers, including Aaron, James, Hunter, and Trey. We said goodbye to them. I don't think anyone was too surprised at that group of names going home. I think everyone was surprised to find out that Brendan, the firefighter, was the last one to get a rose. I really thought out of the names that left this episode, I thought Trey was going to stay and Brendan was going to leave. I was a little surprised by that.
Well, I think we said a few episodes ago something that we thought might happen to Trey. I forget if you said it or I said it. Was just that because he's always sort of seems to be at the center of the drama, like that's going to, like, that kind of automatically gives you this sort of negative sort of feeling in the back of your head, you know? Like that's sort of, it's like a common link, even though it's not necessarily true,
Mm-hmm.
or however you want to put it. It gets associated with that person. So I feel like that probably had the most to do with him leaving, is that he seemed to always sort of be at the center of this conflict. When should there be conflict? I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, I think conflict would come regardless when 30 people are dating the same person and they all know about it. Eventually there's going to be conflict. I don't know. I feel like Trey's heart is good. He's just a little immature. And James, I just think we didn't get to see anything of him. He kept saying he had feelings for Katie. I don't know why, because we don't really see them up until he left. Practically saw zero interactions between the two. Obviously, they were interacting if he lasted this long. But I found that a little surprising and also not. I personally wanted to see him stick around because I feel like if he had been given proper time, I don't think he necessarily would have ended up on one knee at the end of this, but we might have saw more of him than we did. Like the other guys, I wasn't sure Katie was going to ever have a true relationship with, but I felt like James could have been a contender, so I'm surprised that he went home versus Brendan. But once they were sent home, we did find out that Trey, Aaron, and James are all going to appear on Bachelor in Paradise for those who follow along with that. I personally never have. I might now that I know a fair amount of the people on it, but I feel like that's just another show to commit to, and I'm not sure I can do that at this point in time. But I would like to make some of my final four predictions now that we're dwindling down. Yeah. So way back when the season started, I had really no idea who was going to end up being some of the final guys. But at this point in time, I'm going to say my final four predictions are Greg, Blake, Andrew S., and then my fourth person's a little up in the air. I think it's either going to be Michael A. or Mike P. But I need to see more from Mike P before I determine if he's going to make that final four.
Yeah, I think I agree with Greg. Blake's a snake, so he'll probably make it pretty far. Andrew S. Who's Andrew?
The football player who they went on one date. Fake accent.
On him.
The fake accent's not doing it for you?
No, I just don't think he's genuine.
Really?
But yeah, I will agree with what you said about James too. Like, he made a really big opening at the start of the show, but then he kind of just drifted along, and I thought he was back, and I was wrong. I've been pretty wrong this season, but
I feel like that's not unexpected.
Gotta stay positive, I guess. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good prediction.
I mean, the season's flying by. We're already over halfway through, and there's only a handful of guys left. So,
yeah.
And I think now that we know, hometowns and overnight dates are practically around the corner, I think things are really going to escalate, and on these dates that she has with people, we're either going to see a lot of self-eliminations, or Katie's just going to start sending people home left and right.
Yeah.
Because this is where things get serious. So we'll see how the rest of the season progresses.
I honestly don't know what to think of Katie anymore. And I'm not saying that to be really dramatic, although it sounded super dramatic.
You said it very dramatically.
I know. I apologize, but I just felt like this episode, it just seemed like she did a bunch of stuff that I didn't think she would do.
Like sending Connor home?
Sending Connor home. That whole just like not confronting him about an issue like that all of that seemed hypocritical to some degree. So I really don't know what to think, and especially with how how long everybody's been sort of driving her to eliminate people.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's been a bigger push from the contestants than her. And so I don't know what to make of that either, because like I feel like that could change at any moment, or that could continue being what happens, which, feels kind of like a raw deal for her. But, I really am just I was taken aback, and I lost faith.
Well, with only a few episodes left, I guess we'll have to see if that faith is restored. But every episode, we're getting that much closer to hometowns and fantasy suites. The guys are dwindling down, and they're dwindling down fast. The season's going to be over before we know it. So until next week, Trash Talkers, that's a wrap.